Part 7. The knuckles look a little too puffy. Look at the reference. You notice we're spending more time, finally, in the perspective view. We shouldn't ever begin there as a foundation because it's too ambiguous, the space. But now, we're not really using reference so much anymore. We have to use our intuition, as I said. Where this part of the finger has this detail, I should take these and extrude and have a little bit of extra tissue for that knuckle. And I'm going to do the same here, and I actually am going to do the same for the nail. Select both of these that fall right over the knuckle. It's a little bit hard to see. Let me hit 4 so you can see through it. You can see where all that tissue is, and then extrude, and then scale that in to create a little bit extra tissue, like that. That would be already maybe your fantasy creature that has like bulgy, skinny knuckles. Now, that's looking a little ridiculous, but looked like a lot at first, but then massage it in a little bit, and it just melts into the shape. It's going to take you time to do that, so I'm not going to do every one in front of you, so it's not going to waste your time. But I just want to show you one, and then I can do all the rest of it and the nails, so it will save time. So let's do the thumb real quick, selecting that face, and look into that view. Oh, we could probably adjust this, and let's do it the same way. That thumb isn't posed, has this weird angle, almost like that to it, and it's not agreeing probably with that thumb. We are going to do our best, and this is not agreeing too. We should have looked in the side view to see if we can better do that. Okay, now I probably should use the B. Let's see, a little bit bigger brush by hitting B and then dragging with the left mouse button. Okay, I haven't come to the side view for a while, so some of that webbing is getting a little bit too much. So this needs a lot more focus on what's going on. Now, I feel I don't have to take so much time in front of you to do this, but it has the same process as the fingers, right? So I'm doing that different technique where I'm stretching all the way out, make sure it looks good in different views. The thumb is a really hard thing to come up because it's coming opposable to the hand. And that's how we evolved differently from primates, that we have this thumb that opposes the palm of the hand so we can grab things. And it's interestingly hard to draw right, and it's hard to sculpt right because we tend to think of it as just as flat as the fingers, right? It's really, really different. Anyway, yep, I would put another one here, another one here, and another one here at the edge. And, and I'll have one last part to sculpting and polishing and finishing the hand. Okay, that's it. Video number 8 for the mesh construction, and then we're going to move on to other things. What I did do is add the other knuckles. I'm grabbing these. Let's just, if you want a quick extrude, because that's such a common tool, they threw it in right here on the surface. So holding shift, and you've got to be inside that yellow tiny square, then pull out, and you've got a knuckle just popping right out there. That's really, really quick. So if you're on another tool and want to jump back to extrude, if you hit shift period, holding shift and hit the period on your keyboard, it expands to all the neighboring faces. Let's run through quick what I did. I did the top knuckles. It's before in the same manner of these, and spent minute time just adjusting each little edge to make it look good as possible. Also, here you can again look at your own hand, probably better than reference. This line right here is very useful. Remember, I put 3 bracketing in the top and the bottom of the knuckle, and the one right in the middle, if you look at your own hand, that crease is directly behind your knuckle on the other side. So that's where it's going to bend. So I tuck that in a little bit, like that. See how it's opposite of each knuckle? Just put it in a little bit, but not too much, where it looks too lizard-like or something. So I did that with each one, and then I started to build out the thumb, and this took a little more work. Let me show you. It's a little different here. Here, if you look at your own hand, the knuckle creases are not lining up in a straight plane. It's, again, an opposable thumb, so it's tilted, it's rotated, and it's rotated about, I don't know, 30 degrees away. I extruded 4 faces, not just 2, to make that knuckle. I also built in a pad to the thumb by selecting these 3 faces and extruding that. If I didn't, I wouldn't have that major fleshy part of the thumb. And if we back off, we can see, you know, that's taking shape. I could create an extrusion pad on each one of these sides, kind of like this, right? And maybe for your fantasy hand, you want to have suction cups or something on there like that. I don't know, weird. Like a local scale X, Y, and Z. That would be very useful if I want to build that out. But I think I can get away with not. Okay, one other thing before I pause it again. If we look at it, especially the knuckles, it looks like it's getting pretty lumpy, and that's natural. That's going to happen, like some arthritic old hand or something. It's just a lumpiness that will be everything that you make as soon as you insert more edges. Go to Mesh Tools, go to Sculpting Tools. Now all these tools, if you've never opened Mudbox, are imitations of Mudbox. And if you've never heard of Mudbox, part of education to know. I won't go into it, but all these tools will help you sculpt a surface intuitively, almost like clay and having tools. We have Sculpt Tool, Smooth Tool. And what I'm going to use just at the moment is Smooth Tool. Select the model first, and then Smooth Tool. Do you see how it changes to a gray shade? And it has this circle as a paintbrush. Now remember, like soft select, if I hold B, I change the size of the brush. Okay, now my goal is to smooth out the lumpiness. So I'm choosing Smooth. That's the tool I have. And there's also an intensity to it, which can be raised and lowered, but right now I'm just using the default. Now look what's happening. If I just tap it, do you see it taking out some of the lumpiness? If it's too much, you can adjust it. Now what's the name of this tool? It is a Sculpting Tool, Smooth Tool. In the old days it used to be called the Artisan Tool in Maya. Now it's just an integrated part, and then Mudbox took it over. You could try some of the other tools if you're going to experiment. Sculpt Tool, it's set very, very high, crazy, you know, so when you get to your fantasy hands and you're doing weird, crazy alterations, these are your friend. You can use the Sculpt Tool. If you want to adjust the intensity, you can, I believe it's the M key, but just to know exactly what it's set at, just go to like the Sculpt Tool, for example, in the option box, and it has the strength right here. It's at 15. Maybe you want it lower. So you see I'm holding M. That's another way to do it. You see this little thing going up and down? What I'm doing is holding M and dragging the left mouse button, and that's what's getting the intensity. So B is for brush size, M is intensity. Now it's the exact same tools in Mudbox, if you've seen Mudbox. So you can get just the sweet spot with intensity, and when you get to your fantasy hands, you want to do some weird experimentations. You can do that. So if I hit the Smooth Tool and the option box, or the M, which is way off, let's lower it. So so I'm hitting the strength is way up. Strength is way down now. It has a very subtle effect. See, it's very, very, very slight. And maybe that's what you need, because you want to just slightly, you don't want to distort the fingers. You want to get the size to just get the boniness and lumpiness out of it. And see how it nicely changes the rocky and the lumpy areas to it. And you could as well try to get the fatty pads of the fingers with the Sculpt Tool like that. But okay, we're back, and I just want to discuss a little bit about nails, because everybody has different nails, and you might have guessed that I would just do an extrusion. I did this index finger first, and I just extruded here. Here's what I did. I just took this line and moved it a little bit more down, which gave a flow to it in the back, right? It doesn't destroy the front. And then I took that face and I extruded it, and then took some time to shape it. Now, if you have very short nails, you might have to do this step, right? This might be good. This here might be good. You could just leave it and texture map it because it's not an extreme close-up again. But if you have long nails, then you'll need something like this because look, this is what I did too. I just want to do the best you can. If you don't finish all this with a nail detail, it's not going to hurt you too much. But look, let's say you had really long nails, or you want in your fantasy hand to have long nails. You'll have the opportunity of taking that. Now that you've inserted that face, you can see what I'm going to do, and stretch that to make a long nail. Whoops. That's really long nails, but that's probably shouldn't be working in the perspective view so much, so I can't really see what I'm doing. Should be a bit thicker. Anyway, you know, you'd have to finesse it a bit. There we go. You know what I mean? So that's how you get nails, long nails. I don't have really long nails, so I'm going to keep it rather simple. And I will extrude these, leave it off. Okay, I'm going to pause it and finish those and get back. Okay, just finishing here, pointing out the thumbnail. I think it's pretty essential because it's so big. It's such a big nail on your hand, it needs to be modeled, and I grabbed 2 of these faces to be able to make that shape. And I have all the rest of the nails here blocked in like that. And if they look like kind of lumpy, what you do is go back and you smooth it out. And you select a model and smooth anything that's too lumpy or too edgy. You could hit smooth. There's also a relax tool, which will, that's pretty strong. So if we go to the option box, oh, it's open here. It's I have the maybe you couldn't see this because it was off screen, but I'm hitting here. When I hit the option box to sculpt and relax, I have the strength here, which I can go down, or if I hit the M, remember the B and the M keys, it can adjust the strength. So it's way too strong, you know, it's going to start doing that. This is the relax tool. It also, just like the smooth tool, can take out the knobbiness or the boniness or the edginess of this. But again, some people might have nails that come out. Anyway, this is near completion for the mesh. So I'm going to just do a spin around, see what we have. And yeah, I could probably smooth a lot of areas still here, but I don't want you to feel you need to work this to death or something. You have something like this, and you're using the smooth or relax, and you have a general, let's look at it in the 4 view. Let's look at it in the 5 and use the X-ray. And we also can display it in different ways. We can say wireframe on smooth. There's different shading methods here. The wireframe on shaded. This is the wireframe. It's again in shading if you want a different way to just look at the topology and appreciate it and see how it flows. It should flow around organically the knuckles and the pads of the hands, and you know, that's what you're aiming for more than anything else with the shape, is that it has a nice point flow to it, an edge flow to it, that if it had bones inside it, it would deform pretty nice, natural. Okay, so I'm going to conclude that, and in the next videos we'll be UV mapping and taking it from there. Okay, this is number 9, video number 9 for building the hand, and we're in the UV stage. Check out vertex face. You know when you click that, you're looking for any stray lines here that may be remnants of double extruded edges or something. That's vertex face here. And I think we're good. If we did have, let's look in one mode. Let's say if we did have a line here or a line all the way around that square, that would mean that whole face was double extruded. It would be no problem as long as we catch it. And the way to fix it is to merge. You would know right here if you selected that CV instead of 1, as it says up here, it says 2 or more. And the quick way is just to merge right there. So 2 or 3 become 1. Anyway, we're good. We'll hopefully not need repairs as we start to build it with good habits. We're going to start into texturing. Of course, we need to begin with UV. And Maya 2018 has new tools. In UV, we're going to use the 3D Cut and Sew UV tool. You have to have the UV window open, and this new toolkit pops up for making UVs a lot easier in the newer versions of Maya. Okay, one other thing we're going to use that's new in 18 is a plugin called 3D Unfold. So what you have to do is just go to your Windows Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and you have to turn on the plugin. You have to scroll all the way down, almost all the way down. There's something here that says 3D Unfold that you have to turn on. It says right here, Unfold 3D. Close, not exactly, but nearest the bottom. And then you can auto-load that too. Just click that one, and say close. What we're going to do is try to unfold this hand so we can paint on it. We can't really do a planar projection for the whole thing. But look what happens if we just do a flat view of it. We now are faced with the line, this line from front to back. We have to decide where that edge is. So you have to understand when you're doing a cube or a crate or even an oil barrel, those mechanical things are no problem to put a seam, but we're doing something organic. It's much tougher to put in a seam, so we have to hide them. We have to be crafty how we put in those UV seams and how we project. So generally we would do a cylindrical projection for each of the fingers. This one has a flat planar projection, and it may work pretty good for the back of the hand and a palm, but as you can see, it doesn't really work well where the two come together. So that's how it's more or less built like a glove. Like here's two UV shells of the front and the back. Well, that's not going to work really well, and we have better tools to use besides those. So I'll show you the new UV tools we're going to use. What I'm going to do is cut off each finger and separate that from the body of the hand. First step is just do a plain old UV planer for the whole thing. Okay, so looking at the whole thing, UV, choose the whole hand, and go into the option box of planer, and I'm going to choose camera because that's going to angle it. We point it right at her face, so as flat as possible. Make it planar to the camera and say project. I have to do that first. Okay, and then I'm going to reassemble this. Now to this step, I'm going to grab that edge and start separating the edges of the UV shells. Make sure that goes all the way around, starting with the index finger. Okay. Now I'm going to cut that using these UV toolkit. Once again, it's up here, UV Cut and Sew toolkit, and say cut. And you notice that color changed a little bit, and in the UV editor here, we see that line, and that's become its own UV shell. So if I right click in the UV editor and say UV and select one of these UVs, if I hold Command, right click to UV shell, I can pull that finger off, and I'm going to deal with that and make it a separate shell as it goes. Let's keep going though. Okay, let's do the other finger. Select the edges around that define that texture shell, that UV shell. Make sure that that's highlighted and what we want. It looks good. Again, UV toolkit, cut. It becomes a different color code. That's just a stand-in code. It's not really that color. It's just telling you it's a separate shell. Let's keep doing the rest of the fingers. We're just defining the edges of the shells. So all you really have to know is what we're doing. I'm going to cut off that finger too. Is we're creating different UV projections. If something has to be unfolded, it needs a seam. I'm defining that that's where the flesh is probably going to fold over anyway, right here. So that's the best agreement area where the flesh might be a line or a crease or a wrinkle. So I'm going to follow the contours. So I shouldn't put one right in the middle of the hand or anything like that. Anyway, I'm going to do the thumb now. not making any mistake, choosing any edge I don't need, and then cut. There's the thumb isolated. Now I have separate shells. I really don't need to go into this. It's already separated out. It's cut out. What I mean is the palm of the hand, the back of the hand. Problem is everything's overlapping each other. So imagine if you're painting a t-shirt or something. You would need it separated and unfolded. Right click, as I said, to UV shell, and let's pull off a finger. And now what we need to do is to lay that flat. Imagine if it were a cylinder and you're going to paint on it on a flat table. We need to find where we're going to have a seam and then unfold it. So with that finger, which is the index finger here, we got to find somewhere unobtrusive where we're going to unfold it. So I'm going to choose an edge. So the edge I'm choosing is going to be right here, right there, up there on the index finger, and right there. Make sure you don't miss an edge. All right, now I have to make another cut there, because that's the only way I want to. If it were like a piece of material or fabric or cardboard or something, that's, you'd have to make another cut to unfold it, wouldn't you? So this is what we're doing. We're making one more cut, and we're going to use the UV toolkit and say cut there. And you can see how it affected it. Now it's still overlapped on each other. We're going to unfold that. So we're going to UV editor, select all the UVs, and we're going to open unfold, UV toolkit, and click unfold. Now it's going to nicely unfold that finger, and we're going to do the same to the other fingers, and we're going to place them in the 0-1 space and prepare them for painting. So I'll do one more and then I'll pause it because the rest is similar. So with this green finger, middle finger, I'm again going to choose where I'm going to put the seam. Hopefully it will be less obtrusive. Put it here, here, and choose the same, making one by one, just to be careful. I don't want the whole loop here, just want that edge, and then I will cut. All right. And UV texture editor, let's grab that. Just all I need is one UV, right click, holding command to shell, and this is again called a UV shell, and we're going to unfold that by this new unfold tool here, unfold, and I'll continue on with each finger. Okay, jumping ahead, it was really quick. I did the 4. Now I'm going to do the thumb 2. Choose a line that you're going to have a seam. For the thumb, I'm going to choose this right here to unfold it, like right along there. Okay, then, sorry about that. And then cut along the seam, etc., just like all the other fingers. And we're going to grab that UV shell and pull off the thumb. And then we're going to unfold the thumb along the broken seam that we made. All right, so we have almost all the fingers off here. Okay, for the rest of the hand, that is this more gray area, it's a bit easier because everything else has been, I would say, subtracted from. There's nothing left really but this part. All the dark, I should say, all the bold white seams here are the edges of the textures. So they're defined. That's where the seams will be. And we really don't have to worry about the bottom because that's not going to be seen. It's not going to be rendered in the image. All right. All we really have to do is define one edge for the seam, and the other, we'll only need one seam to each shell, right? As it comes together. That side comes together that side. So I'm just going to select this decisively here. Make sure I don't have any edges. See that one by accident. That's all. Right here. This is the only thing I'm going to cut. Okay. Then the toolkit. Go and cut that. Okay. Now it's cut. Then all I have to do is unfold it. So I'm going to grab all the UVs of the block mass of the hand and then click unfold. And it gives me this big fanned out shape for that whole part. Okay, and also in the editor, when you're using this tool, you can click, used to have to import a checker box, but you can just click this checker box here and see how things are laying out. We don't have anything placed in the UV 01 part yet, so all of them are scattered. So let's start. That was right there, by the way. That guy. Okay, we need to start arranging these shells and better prepare them for painting in the 0, 1 space. So this is called 0, that's 1, that's why it's called 0, 1. That square right there. We have to arrange everything as well as possible in that space. So you're trying to use up as much real estate as you can, because all of this is going to get painted. You want to use all those pixels. This is a image you're going to bring into Photoshop and bring in your pictures that you took of your hands to paint. So I'm going to spend time arranging this and cut back. I have this other tool under Unfold called Optimize, and say I want to be able to make those UVs as less crooked, more relaxed as possible. So I'm going to click Optimize here. Keep clicking and Unfold till I can't really optimize it anymore. What we're trying to avoid is anything that's going to overlap another part. You can see how it changes colors. And it here, this is why we have colors at all. Because we have, if you've been wondering that time, why do you not have the blue that I have? This was triggered default on mine. If it's on yours, if you just open UV Editor, the wireframe display looks just like this. But if you click this one, this is the shaded. This is indicating that you have parts that are overlapping or not. Here's what I mean. If I just pull this piece, this little index finger, over another piece, and it shows reddish, that means that part's overlapping other part. It's very similar to if you had a t-shirt again, and one part of the cloth were folded over on another part. What would happen if you tried to paint on it? You couldn't. The brush would get stuck, or wouldn't be able to paint on the surface underneath. So we have to unfold it. It's a very similar analogy to unfolding, as smooth as possible. So you could spend some time, and I don't expect this to be perfect, your first project, but spend some time to try to relax and unfold as much as you can here, because we have to paint, all these fingers in there as well as we can. So one tool to help you there could be just unfold. There's a little icon next to it that shows through sort of heat and coolness any areas that are getting distorted, a little overly distorted or stretched in the UV. Another diagnostic tool. Use that or consider it later. Okay, just cutting back, I'm spending a little time smoothing out the appearance of the UV layout, just filling the space. Yours is going to look slightly different from this. I'm just trying to maximize the real estate of this 0, 1 space. And I have these fingers that, some of them are upside down. So however they're using or maximizing the space the best. It doesn't really have to follow the fingers as they're lined up here. Of course, that is the thumb, that's the index, that's the middle ring fingers, upside down, and that's the pinky. And we're going to have to paint in here, because as you're guessing, that's going to be a knuckle right there. We're going to paint that. We're going to paint that knuckle and that, and it's getting really tiny, where that nail is. So I don't expect you to spend a lot of time in here this first time, just to do your very best to get those shells in place, and then we're going to move on quickly. But as you get better in creating the mesh and laying out the UVs, as I showed you, there's a lot of tools in here that can quicken the pace, and I'm just using only a few of them, just giving a gestalt of it, just the overall picture, so to speak. This is what my particular UV layout is looking. Part 10, we are going to make a UV snapshot, bring that into Photoshop next, start painting and putting everything in its place over the shells and bring it back. So this is the last stretch of the color texturing part. We have their UV shells all laid out here. We've used a UV toolkit to get there, and from cutting edges, not from projecting. So it went much, much faster if you are used to the old method, or if you tried it at another school or something like that. It's new to Maya 18. All right, so Next, as mentioned, UV snapshot. So we want to take a picture of this, get this kind of skeletal view of what's going on into a snapshot that we can paint. It's like coloring book, painting inside the lines. I did spend a little time of relaxing some of this stuff because I know this is where the knuckles are going to go and this is where painting needs to be. That's where the nail is. This one's upside down, so the nail's here. And that's where the nail is over there. And that hole is where the thumb's coming out. So it's not perfect, but it's using most of the UV 01 space. All right, so to take a snapshot, we have to first make sure we select the mesh in the scene. Everything's selected. All the shells are selected in the UV editor. Then we're going to go to image. All right, and then we're going to go to UV snapshot in the UV editor. Okay, that pops up. Now we're going to find a home. It's important to do these steps. File name. Find a place you want to save it. I'm saving mine here in this local place. Make sure it's somewhere you can find it on your desktop. And I'm going to put a little tag for me to use so I know this one. And next important, make sure it says JPEG. We're going to use JPEG for it. Also, yours will say probably a different number. I put in 1200. That's a good size because we need that resolution. If yours says 500, change it to 1200. It's a square image, so whatever you change the top to, the bottom will change as well. See? It has to make a 01 square image. So we're going to put 1200. 1200, 1200, and those three things you changed, the destination, file name, or you're not going to find it, JPEG, and the size. And make sure mesh is selected, just say apply and close. Then check your destination where you saved it, and this is what you have. It's this black and white graphic image of everywhere you're going to paint inside and not outside. Of course, right? So let's take that into Photoshop. Here we are in Photoshop with the layer of UV snapshot brought in, and we're going to start laying on top of that images of the front and the palm and the fingers, of course. So let's go to that image of your palm, and you're going to the best lit most high resolution image and cutting out the palm of your hand like that. Maybe copy it. This one's going to be kind of messy, surgical approach, and that's going to lay down right in the middle here. Why is that? Because if you go back to Maya and you see what's what here, this part is the palm. This part right here. See that selecting? That's the palm. This is, this is the back of the hand to orient yourself. That part's the back of the hand. The part over here. And this is where the back of the hand right here, the seam. Just to orient yourself. With the fingers it's more obvious, but where the seams come together. Back to Photoshop, we brought in that chunk of flesh we're going to put over where it belongs, and it helps to see through this. Let me zoom in a little bit. And if we see through this layer that we brought in, we can put opacity maybe at 64, 65. Something like that. Okay, and right here, this is the, so you might remember, the hole for the thumb in the UV editor. This is the palm, and it's going into the thumb. So this right here is okay, but it's actually reversed. It's no problem if you hit Command T. Just select that layer in Photoshop and just scale it this way. You can reverse it. Right, and here's where the palm is going, and just give it a little tilt, right, like that. And you can kind of see it now, falling in orientation. That's that other pad. Let's zoom in a little bit. This is where the thumb's coming out. I'm going to show you a couple tools. You probably have used Photoshop enough to be fairly comfortable. Maybe it's been a while. We're going to use different tools here to get this into place. So that's going to be, it's lagging here because it's recording. But anyway, I'm going to use another tool here to stretch this rather than just Command T to rotate it and sort of place it roughly. I'm going to go in Photoshop and I'm going to go to Edit, and it's a little bit out of the camera range, but Edit, Transform, Warp. I'm sure you've used it before. And this allows me to just, see, just change that image and warp, and I want everything to fill in within the lines. All right. That hole right there is that hole for the thumb. So, right. So it's the palm, and then I'm going to do some stretching to make sure this all gets filled with image using warp. Okay. All right, this part here is where it starts meeting the back of the hand, and then they're going to meet up again at the seam. If you look in Maya, UV editor, we can see what's going on. See, that starts to be the back of the hand on that side. And the real seam is just one right here. So that might look a little ugly. We'll have to mix it, but there's always going to be a seam every time we have a shell, so we're trying to hide it as much as possible. If you have a character, you can hide it at the neck or under clothing. Very easy. But when you have just an unclothed hand or something like that, or a body, it takes a lot more artistry to mix and hide those seams, as you're going to see. So we can see what those edges are and how they meet together when we're painting. So here we're going to place the back of the hand. So I have the image of the back of the hand. I'm going to take a big chunk here and I'm going to push it around. To make it fit. If my image was big enough, I wouldn't have to stretch it so much, but that's what I'm doing. Like that. Okay, let's put some opacity on that layer so we can see through it. And we're also going to go to Edit, Transform in Photoshop, Warp to stretch. Fill all the unfilled areas with skin. You may have to use warp more than once. See, we're trying to line up the knuckles like that. It's going to take some doing just with this warp tool. And later we're going to use some painting. That little tendon right there will paint out. It's going to look a little odd. And we'll have some overlap like this. All right. I'm going to let it go there. Okay. I increased the opacity, and we have these two, front palm and the back of the hand here. I'm going to merge these two layers together, and right there, merge layers, so these two become one. And I'm going to use some painting tools to sort of blend them, because I have still more areas to fill here. Another thing I could have done, I'm going to back up, is in this right here, this area, I will Bring back. You could, anywhere that it's overlapping, erase one over the other. Like that one, you could soft erase it. Our mission is to blend it into the other one and make sure we have the right eraser tool. Okay, so just using an eraser tool. It is really jumpy when I start recording. See what I'm doing? It's just blending the skin from one edge and the other, and make sure you don't get any of that black areas underneath, like that. And you can change the brush size so it becomes one seamless piece of skin. Okay, like I was doing before, you can merge those two layers, and now use the stamp tool. Just hit S or whatever tool you're comfortable with using to fill these areas. And I have the opacity on 30, so it's slow going, but that's probably pretty good because it's gonna be cloud-like, just faded in to one another, so it's more even, organic, like that. Okay, and I'll do the bottom as well, and I'll do a few more and cut back. Okay, filled in these areas. Also, we want to eliminate as many shadows as we can. If I can dodge out these shadows, I will, because we'll let Maya create the shadows when we do our final render, and so we're just trying to evenly patch skin over it. All right, and we could do a see-through here for opacity. See how it's laying? Make sure it's following the flow, laying over the knuckles. Okay, and then we can do the fingers. For the fingers, I did a little bit of a work ahead, trying to always save work. I just took one finger, and it was from starting from selecting here the whole back, and then pasting it, pasting it here, and then selecting the edges of the front palm side and pasting it here, and then blending between them. It takes a little time, but think about it if you only want to do one. And then what I did is vary a little bit each, so it looks like a different finger or fingernail. I know it looks odd. It looks like a weird sausage or something, but I'm going to take that, select it as I already made it and blended it, and copy it, and saving time, I'm going to paste that into a shot here. Give it a little opacity and rotate it into place for each one of the fingers. However you want to do that, if you have a process you think it's going to be faster, I'm just laying it on it like that, orienting the knuckles to the nail like that. Then I'm going to do a warp. Transform in Photoshop and do a warp. And I'm going to do that for each one of the fingers, and I really want to make sure it's going to line up. See how the lines of the knuckle should line up like that, and the nail should line up as good as possible, also without going outside of the lines. Okay, I'm just going to do that for each finger. I'm going to pause it and come back. Okay, been working on this. I have all my big chunks of flesh cut in there, and turn them off all on a different layer in Photoshop, and here's the UV layout. I want to preserve that PSD in case I want to go back to it, so I can save in Photoshop PSD file with the layers. And saying I'm done, I'm going to flatten everything. I don't need that background anymore. And I'm going to flatten image, discard hidden layers, yes, and saving just as a JPEG this time. So now I'm going to make sure that all of them are flat, okay, and then save that image as a JPEG. This will be my color texture I'm going to use. So going to JPEG, and I will put color, all caps, text, use, and bring that into Maya. Back in Maya, I have all the UV already laid out, of course, and I'm going to material attributes. I'm going to change the material to blend because it's going to get a little shiny, but we'll talk about that later. And in the color, I'm going to put a file as a texture and choose what I created, color text use, and it's going to pop in and you're going to see the lines that I was talking about, the seams. So we're going to try our best to minimize that. For this project, is not going to be a big deal if you have these. Just do the very best. Imagine you had a fantasy creature where they had fur on the back of the hand and flesh on the front, or different types of details for the different sides, like a chimpanzee's hand or something like that. Maybe it's like flesh on the hairy on the back. This would fall into place really naturally, but just for a human, we're going to see these seams. So the best we can do is try to hide them or paint them out. We can do a little bit better than that, but if it ends up like this, that's okay. So I'm going to show you, maybe we can hide those a little bit just by going back and painting some. And Photoshop, there's a little bit we can do. See that little white peeking through? There's a little bit we can do just by moving the UVs in the UV texture editor. Bring it in here. Let's make it a little smaller. And let's maybe take the display of the image off and also click this one. Remember, that is on to make it blue. That's why it was blue. Colors, and this one just for the wires. Okay, we can take some of the edges that seem to be culprits, finding where they are here, and moving them a little bit. See if we can, that would be worse, but seeing if you can nudge the edge a little bit. Sometimes you can, especially on an edge like that. UV, just move it a little bit more. We can hide any potential problems. But some of the where the really dark seams coming together. And the other seam we try to hide, you know, it's there, but it's masquerade pretty well. Not too bad. And here it's taken out because of the darkness. Here it's a little more pronounced, but as a medium shot, being this far away, maybe not too bad. And we can probably fix this right here by lightening that edge right there. Going back into Photoshop in the original image, you could tell that hit shadow. That's why we're trying to photograph. We're just using your phone to try to minimize shadows and the lighting. We're trying to lighten that part up almost as evenly as possible. And that vein right there, or tendon I should say, it's a little bit awkward. So maybe we can fix that too. I don't really expect you to go in here and do a lot of this painting on this first-hand project. You're going to get better at this over time. So I'm just showing a little bit ahead of what I maybe expect if you have time to do. Okay, just that lightening up like that. Save the image. Save. Just save it as the same name right over the image. It's going to ask replace. Yes. Replace it. Then when I go back to Maya, it doesn't pop in just right away. I'm going to open the attribute editor in the color, and I'm going to click reload. To click reload, and it's going to look at the image again. That's a little bit better, a little bit more hidden. Little color difference. If we really want to be fancy and add time, we'd go in and use the stamp tool to paste one edge to another, like this. Make sure that edge is pasted really nicely to that edge. Okay, so improve that a little bit. So getting pretty good. That at this close, I can't really detect that seam, even though I know it has a seam, and I could do the same to these parts of the fingers if I like, and that part to try to hide that. Again, not entirely expected for your first project. Just do the best you can. So extra polish for me, going in and lightening these edges where all the seams are coming together so they can virtually disappear when we put them on. So back to I like going from that, and let's reload that image to go to that. So a little bit less, and a few more edges to do if I want to so perfect that. Okay, just a little bit of doctoring up. I could do a little bit more, but that's good for so far. I'm going to leave on that.